Ooh, yeah, I'm feeling it. Keep going. Dustin, can you like rap or something? No Honest Designers rap? Welcome to the Honest Designers Show. We're going to show you where to go. Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week, I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glanz. This week, we're talking all about mental health. We dig into our own struggles with mental health and share how they can impact so many creatives out there. So without further ado, let's get into the show. So guys, I was planning quite a serious episode here. Lisa's laughing. The whole time I'm doing the intro, she's giggling at me. Is that Dustin's head? Is that what you were laughing at?
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry.
so for everyone listening to the show,
it's kind of
Dustin,
you got the same thing.
Dustin's got this filter on his computer where it contorts his face. This was blocked out at the time I was reading the intro, so I thought Lisa was just cracking up at me. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? What? Is that on your webcam, guys?
Yep.
I love it. Okay, so mental health. I'm here with a couple of characters in the form of Dustin and Ian. All right, I'm going to intro this topic, guys, because part of why this was front of mind, I just talked about this on my own show, and as part of that, I had to do some research into some of the figures behind it. And some of them I knew, some were quite surprising to me. I'd heard before that roughly 1 in 4 people struggle with mental health at some point in their lives. And at any one time, over 450 million people across the world are struggling. So right this second, there's 450 million people struggling with mental health in some way. So it's very, very prevalent. I know as an entrepreneur, it comes up in all kinds of ways, but I think the same thing can apply if you're creative. And obviously we've got a lot of creative entrepreneurs as well who listen to the show. So I guess, what are your guys' experiences with this? I know it's obviously not black and white. It very much tends to exist on a spectrum. I don't think it's a case of, well, that person's fine and well, and that person has mental health. We can dip in and out. We can have varying degrees of severity. I've got close friends who have had incredibly severe mental health, and it's completely debilitating. I've never been to that extreme, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't affected me in my life. How about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I for years used to suffer from panic attacks, but like debilitating ones where I literally wouldn't want to go out, and I didn't go out, and it was, you know what happens? It makes your world small, because everything you do, everything you think about, and every place you go to, you're thinking of where's the nearest exit, and where's how do I get out of this, and what if this goes wrong, and what happens is your world becomes just filled with fear, and and as I said, it just becomes really small, and then what happens is your mind becomes small, and the way you think about your ability and who you are as a person and your creativity, and I at the time, obviously, I had no idea where the stuff was coming from and why I was getting these anxiety attacks.
When was
panic
this,
attacks.
Lisa?
I was probably, I'm trying to think, in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. So this was when I was still working for a company as a graphic designer, and it was basically before I started my freelance career. So probably mid 20s then even. And I mean, I went for therapy, which I highly recommend. I think a lot of people have the stigma attached to therapy, and they think, well, I'm a cuckoo, why should I go to therapy? And it's not about that. It's about just having another person having a different perspective. They could give you advice. I mean, they've been trained to give you, techniques that can help you get through stuff. And then, of course, if you really need medication, thankfully I never did. They're obviously licensed to give you that. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with admitting, hang on, I actually just need something to get me through the day, just to get me through this rough patch. And I think as creatives and artists, we're so caught up and attached and I don't know, whatever, to this idea that we have to suffer. And it's not the case. It really isn't, because I think we have this ability to create beautiful things and contribute amazingly to this world. And I think by not allowing yourself to be healthy mentally is that you stop doing that. And I think it's a disservice to yourself and the world. And I think if you can find a way to get out of it, if it means asking for help, if it means admitting things, if it means reading up about it, then do that. Don't pretend that it's not happening, and don't hide, because there's no shame. There's no shame in having this stuff. I think, as you said, Tom, we all have had it, somewhere in our life in varying degrees. And yeah, I'm just glad I'm out of it, I have to be honest.
Yeah, it's a big old weight to carry, right?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about those days, I just can't believe what how different I am, how I feel now about myself and the world and everything. I'm like totally a different person, completely and utterly.
It just goes to show, because I struggle to imagine you in that place, because now you always seem, very happy and kind of, I don't even know the word, just calm, content, like
No, it's bizarre.
Which is amazing.
I mean, I was literally, the only way I can explain it is I was this small, broken, fearful individual. That was me, and summed up. And it's just the journey that obviously I went through to get out of it. It took obviously a lot of mental work and all that kind of stuff. But I'm grateful that I went through it, because I have so much understanding now of what other people go through. And I also, what I really enjoy is that I'm a walking example of how you can actually get out of it. It doesn't have to be, because there was a time in my life I thought, well, that's it. It's with me for the rest of my life. I just have to find ways to deal with it. And it's not the case. You can get past it. And I believe, I still believe this, and I know it's different for everyone, but I believe that the anxiety that I was feeling was my body and my mind telling me, you're missing something, you're not looking at it, and it's time for you to really dig deep and face stuff. And my particular struggle was that I really did not believe that I was creatively capable, and I was capable of being an illustrator and an artist. I just didn't think I was good enough. And all that was part of it, but besides all of that, that was a big area. And I'm just so grateful I went through that, because if I didn't come out on the other end, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So yeah,
good for you.
Battle scars that actually have.
I want to reinforce that part about going to therapy, because I feel like people do feel like, oh, well, if I go to therapy, then I must be a weak person or a sick person, or I should be embarrassed. And really, I think everyone should be going to therapy.
I agree.
Like everyone, like without exception,
literally
should go to therapy.
I think most people that have been to therapy think everyone should go to therapy.
Seriously.
Well, the way I look at it is, if you've ever been filmed doing a talk, or if you've ever seen yourself on camera and then you didn't know you were being filmed, and then you all of a sudden saw it and you kind of cringed a little bit when you saw yourself, you know that feeling? You see, maybe you're hunching a little bit, maybe you're breathing out of your mouth a little too much with your mouth hanging open. Maybe you say something that sounded like it was fine, but it turns out it's like highly offensive or weird. You just see yourself in a very unbiased way, and you might think, well, I have a great boyfriend or girlfriend, I have a great spouse or great friends. They all have a dog in the fight, whether that's to make you sure you're not upset, to make sure that they don't offend you, to make sure the relationship continues. When you go to a therapist, they're essentially like that camera. They're unbiased, and they start asking
Yeah.
you things about what they really see because they don't care either way.
They're
If
like
they're
a
good
mirror.
therapist. Yeah, they're the mirror. They're the video camera, and they show, well, what about this? Why are you doing this? What is the reason you think you do that? And I don't think most of us are questioned about that as much as we probably need to be.
Yeah, and for the record, my therapist, I don't have one anymore, but when I was seeing one, never once asked me, how does that make you feel?
No, mine neither.
And I think that's a lot of the stigma.
Misconception.
I was really embarrassed because there is a stigma around it. And even though it was so vital, because I've talked to you guys about this is when I literally hospitalized myself, got chronically sick, worked myself into the ground. And so I was like a physical and mental wreck at this point. I needed external help. It wasn't something I could think my way out of. And I was embarrassed, like particularly with my family. And I'm sure either they didn't and it was in my head, or they did and they didn't mean to, I don't know. But I remember almost getting like strange looks, or like they felt awkward or uncomfortable when I told them that I was going. I think some people, and maybe I picked up on this wrong, that have the conception of like, what if they talk about me in therapy? Like what kind of worms is going to open up? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a really weird thing. But I totally agree with you guys. It's one of the best things. I think initially it can help you work through what needs to be worked through. After that, it's almost like you're paying for self-awareness.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And they'll give you perspectives on things that are so free, and they'll tell you something. And I mean, I've had so many times where they've said, well, what would happen if that happened? And then you say, well, this would. They'd be like, and what would happen if that happened? And you're like, well, nothing. All of a sudden you walk out and like, it's like someone just extracted like a 50-pound like tumor from your brain. I mean, you feel so like free. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how
you
does
know
this...
what?
Sorry, Lisa, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, we have to face facts that we lie to ourselves literally throughout the whole day. So, you
and
pretend...
don't know it.
Yeah, you don't know it. You don't even know you're doing it. It's habitual, and it's just one of those things. It's like a human brain, what do you call it, coping mechanism. It's what we do. And if you want to, I believe, if you want to better yourself as a person, even creatively, in fact, if we want to, bring it right back to this topic of creativity, if you want to be a better creative, I think having a therapist is fundamental to your growth and your development and your you're moving on, because this person has, as you said, it's a mirror. There's no lying. You can't pretend anymore. And they also give you like perspectives on or different angles that you never have thought of, or you may have eventually got there, but it took you 10 years, so to speed up your growth, it's like a good ticket. Yeah.
I'm really intrigued if you guys live through this, but I'm not for a minute gonna allude to being like manic depressive or anything. My oldest friend in the world is bipolar, and I've seen that up close, and the mania is like scary, and then the depression is like practically comatose, like can't move, face down on a bed kind of thing. So it can be very, very ugly. So thank God I'm not to that extent, but I do find that being a creative and being an entrepreneur gives me this kind of roller coaster of ups and downs, which I know is quite commonplace, but it almost feeds into a kind of like mania and then depression to a more minor extent. So that looks like a rush of inspiration creatively, and like, got to take the world on, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to create, and I'm going to make stuff, and it's amazing. And obviously that can't continue forever. So you get this rush, like where you find that flow, you want to stay up all night creating, building something and drawing, whatever it might be. It's like, just want to stay up all night and drink coffee and get it done. And then invariably you crash after that because you've overextended yourself and it's gone too far. And so then you slump into this depressive state where you kind of feel burnt out and lethargic and uninspired. And then that compounds because you start beating yourself up because you're like, oh, I'm a piece of crap. I'm not getting anything done. And so that makes you slump to the next level down. And then because you have no choice, because you have to get on with your life, you have to find some internal fortitude and pull yourself out of it. and be like, okay, I got to pull myself together. And so you kind of climb out of it. And then as you're on the ascendancy again, that then starts to accelerate. And it's like, okay, I pull myself out like I'm a winner and I'm doing good again. And then before you know it, the whole cycle repeats, because then you're into the next thing and really hyperactive for that and kind of manic with that. Is that just me, or can you guys relate?
Well,
I think we all have these feedback loops.
Yeah, I mean, haven't you just described the creative process essentially in a nutshell? I mean, we all kind of go through that all the time. I mean, you come up with an idea, you're excited, you think it's the best thing that's ever happened to the universe, and you tackle it and you're in it, and then like when you start realizing, wait a minute, this actually is crap. Who's going to like it? No one's going to like it. I hate this. This is terrible. I'm a terrible artist. Oh my God, what am I going to do?
And it's like different people, right? When you're in those headspaces, it's like Jekyll and Hyde. And I don't know how regularly you get this, but at some points I've had it as regularly, the cycle is like every 2 weeks. And it gets so mentally draining because it's like every fortnight I'm elated and depressed on repeat.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
And isn't it crazy? Because despite the fact that like it repeats itself so predictably that you could almost calendar it out every time. I mean, this happens with my sales. This happens with my emotions about the business. This happens with my emotions about my wife, about my life in general. It happens in these perfect cycles. And even though it happens, like, I don't believe that time, every time it happens, this time's different. This is not just a slow time of the month. The business is finally over with. It's ending. This is where like it's crazy. It's like that's how deluded we are. And that's why I think it's really healthy to have someone be like, hey, remember this happened like 20 times
2 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The thing is you don't look like you have a track record and you think, oh, okay, there hasn't been a month in my, 7 years of being freelance where I've earned zero money in the month, but yet I spend 29 days in the month going, oh no, where's the money coming on? And then you get to that 30th day and you're like, oh, it's all right.
Yeah,
and then it starts
so
over
true,
again.
Man, it's sick. It's sick because I find myself doing that too.
You remember early days design cuts where you used to email me and say, when do you sleep, dude? Because I'd always get straight back to you.
Yeah. I was like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, like at that point, because it was just me, but I was doing so many jobs and pulling together like these great bundles and that kind of thing. It was always down until the last second, every single time. And that was every 2 weeks. It still is. But that meant every 2 weeks I had what Ian's talking about, where I was freaking out and like I was going to have a heart attack. My anxiety was that high because every single time I thought, oh no, this time I've really screwed it up. Like I've run out of time. I've left it to you last minute. I'm not able to pull everything together in time. I'm going to let everyone down. I'm going to be a public failure. Like, oh my God, my life's over. That every 2 weeks for about 2 to 3 years.
It's got to kill you.
It's like a form of torture. And instead of stepping back and being like, what the hell am I doing to myself? You just keep on going through it. Like,
And is that what made you ill? Was it the stress?
Probably. It was like the perfect storm of just like treating myself
Something
really
was
badly.
going to give. I mean, you can't carry on like that.
Because I left working on a magazine just because I couldn't cope with the tight deadlines every month.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just the way magazines work where you're like 3 weeks of nothing and then 1 week of everything needs to be done. And, the buck stops with you because you're the one that sends it to the printers. And I had I thought I was ill, but I actually just had stress-induced stomach aches for like 2-3 days afterwards. And I'd be in bed and just like, oh. And that eventually thought I can't deal with that. And so I thought, well, that's it. I'm going to make a less stressful option and go freelance.
But Ian, I have to say that was really intuitive of you to react to the fact that you realize, hang on, I can't live like this. How many people just don't? They just carry on, and like 10 years later.
What is that weird accepting? Is it the stiff upper lip when people are like, I'm bedbound with stomach cramp from stress, but this must be normal. I'm going to keep going. Like, why do you do that?
I think it's just being like, the more you can tune in to how you work.
Yes.
Rather than comparing yourself, you need to work like this. Like, for me, when I was releasing products like me and Dustin were that sort of same period of like every couple of weeks, I came to realize I'm no good at like batching stuff, producing stuff ready for, to post then. I have to work in a deadline. Maybe that's probably because of the magazine, but like, maybe a week before it has to go out or like 3 days before. And I'd work really long hours and be really late to bed and just to get to that deadline. But that was the way I worked. And I couldn't, I tried to be more organized, but I just couldn't get into that place. I would just fiddle around and I'd spend ages doing it. But actually, for me, it's condensed into small areas of time. And I suppose being in tune with how you work sometimes can help alleviate some of that stress, even though that, working 3 days of like 16 hours is not particularly healthy. I know that there's an end in sight and I can get through that. So, and just working out where your stress points are. And like, I feel like over the past couple of months, I've been creatively burnt out because I've been like, I realized that, I've done over 1,500 posts on Instagram.
Wow.
A majority of those are like bespoke pieces of art. And so I'm like, it just coming up with ideas all the time has just been, there's people who do much more stressful jobs than I do, but just idea generation is just something that has maybe drained me quite a lot. And I have to think, sometimes I need to give myself a rest and give myself a break. And
well, isn't that part of how we punish ourselves? Because there's a great video on YouTube. If you check out, for people listening, there's a YouTube channel called School of Life by this amazing philosopher type guy that went to Oxford. Anyways, he talks about first world problems.
English?
I think his name is like Alain. I'm going to say it long. Alain de Botton or something like that.
Yeah, Alain de Botton.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he has so many videos that are literally almost like therapy to listen to him talk, give you perspective on things. But he has one, he talks about first world problems, and he kind of says, like people often say first world problems, like Ian just did about this thing, but that doesn't negate the fact that Ian has to deal with that. Because other people are dealing with something does not mean that in a first world society with unique capitalistic problems,
correct,
that there's things that happens. He does that. He feels this pressure that he needs to continue to output it. There's a pressure to do that. That is as legitimate and real a problem as any problem. It might not be a life or death problem, but it's something that regardless he struggles with. And and then we punish ourselves. Well, why? I have it so good. Why should I worry about that? Like somehow we're not entitled to
I think as well, like a physical ailment is so obvious to people. If someone came along and chopped my leg off, I'd probably get sympathy. But if something's in your head and people can't see it and it's not tangible, then it's like, is it really real? Are they milking it, like you say?
It's like, oh, shame. They're the sensitive one. That's what I used to get. Shame. She's sensitive. She can't help it.
And now you just get the kooky one.
See, there's a quote, there's a really famous quote about, you have to, when inspiration doesn't strike, it's got to, when an inspiration comes, it's got to find you working. And it's like, sometimes you're just getting started. You just don't, if you're like, there's no ideas. How can I start working if there's nothing tangible to grab hold of I'm quite happy to do the work, but it's just like there's just nothing sometimes, and you just like
struggle.
I can go and do some admin tasks, so that's not going to create the thing I need to create. So it's I think it's a weird thing when sometimes you as creatives you crave something that's like going back to the builder. Here's the plans of the house. Could you create it following these plans? And sometimes it's like, actually, I could really do with that A to B. This is how you make it.
Yeah.
Could do with an architect.
Yeah. And actually,
I was gonna say, here's the sick part about social media, and Ian probably knows this better than any of us. I made a Facebook page because it was required to do ads or something for myself. I'm not even using it. Facebook is constantly, for my Retro Supply page and my personal page, you should really post something. Like, if you want to keep your engagement up, if you want us to keep showing stuff, you better post something. Instagram, I don't know if Instagram does it, but other ones remind me constantly. YouTube will be like, hey, if you don't, like they'll tell their creators, hey, if you don't post regularly, it's going to affect you and the algorithms, the other things. So not only do we put this pressure on ourselves, but these companies like Google, who owns YouTube, and Facebook, who owns Instagram, are putting this pressure on you. They're like, hey, everything collapses if you don't keep making stuff, Ian. You better keep making stuff, or else we won't show you to as many people. It's sick. It's
yeah,
crazy.
there's a lot of
completely.
Yeah,
Sorry, Lisa, go on.
No, I was just going to say, there's a lot of doom and gloom that's adding to our stress. And I think what we have to focus on, the battle isn't outward, it's actually inward. And it's our own stuff that we have to try and control, because that's the only thing you can control, as you were saying in your previous episode, Dustin. It's like, that's the only thing you have a handle on, and that's what we should be focusing on. We can't control the other stuff. It's out of our hands. Even if we post 50 times a day on Instagram or Facebook or wherever. It's not, it's not our thing.
I think, unfortunately, you can't always control your mental health. Even if everything's great, you feel terrible, like the world's ending. And
yes,
but you can have good mental hygiene,
Yes, I think that's what I'm. Yeah, exactly that.
That's a great way of putting it.
You got to keep tabs on what you're thinking and the stuff that you're putting into your mind. And that includes social media, or the stuff that you're reading. And oh, look how much better they are than I am. And it's all that. You got to good. It's like good housekeeping for your mind, as you said. It's
exactly, because things like social media, they will never let you feel happy. If they let you feel happy about how much you've posted, then you stop making stuff and people stop looking and they stop selling ads. They are always going to keep you in a position of feeling off kilter, so you will keep making stuff. And so it's really why, you have to be like, I'm going to live in my own world where I set what success is.
I saw an infographic about that, and it was saying how Facebook and Instagram and sites like that are like the world's biggest drug dealers. And it's so true. They're just like, we're a bunch of addicts, and they're just keeping us there on the hook. And I know in terms of some things that have worked for me, even more recently, more exercise has been scientifically proven to help with your mental health and obviously your physical health. And I personally I'm not drinking this month and for the foreseeable future, or I've scaled it back, because funny enough, when I was like working super hard in the week and then going and partying with my friends too hard and getting a 2-day hangover, that only compounds that slump where you're already feeling bad about stuff, and now you're like got hangxiety on top of anxiety. So do kind of audit your life and be like, what is causing things. And I listened to a podcast from a CEO, which I really look up to recently, and he was talking about some of this stuff, and he was basically alluding to the fact he thought mental health was in many senses a man-made invention. And he pointed out that obviously some people have legitimate like chemical imbalances, and that's an innate thing. But so much of it has become more prevalent in the last few centuries, and particularly the last few decades, and it seems to only be getting worse. And a lot of that was not around thousands of years ago in the same way. I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, you know how they're saying that cancer is caused a lot by what we ingest. In other words, the air is dirtier, the food that we eat isn't, full of a whole lot of stuff. The same with mental health. I mean, the stuff that we're putting into our minds in terms of what we're looking at every day, and the things that we're listening to, and the things we're starting to believe, that all contributes to how you feel about life and yourself and everything around you. And I mean, we're meant to be these joyful beings because that's when we're at our best. And I think the world doesn't always necessarily promote that. There's too much competition. There's too much look at, they're better than me, and they're skinnier, they're healthier, they're prettier, they whatever. It's just, there's too much negativity and competition and comparing. And I think we should be more aware of what we're putting into our minds and what we're consuming from that point of view, and rather focus more on what we can contribute to the world, because we're all amazing in our own ways.
You know what? I think that's a fantastic point to end on. Literally, as you were saying that, I started feeling a weight lifting in my mind, because I've been stressing quite a lot recently and getting a bit of anxiety over various things. And as you said that, they started to like in my head shift into a bit of perspective of like, you know what, I'm healthy, like I'm okay, like, you know, the stuff that freaks me out is, you know, not gonna end me right now. So thank you for sharing, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you for listening at home or wherever you are. We get people all over the place. People on beaches listen to us. A lot of people mowing the lawn. Seems to be big for the lawnmowers out there, this show.
How do they hear?
But yeah, if there's any people, any lawnmowers out there struggling with mental health or anyone else, reach out on social media. You're not alone. We'd love to hear with you. I think it's important to lift that stigma, to talk openly about this stuff. And I hope this episode helped in some small way with that. As always, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you guys, and we will see you soon. Bye from us.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes and now Spotify by searching for The Honest Designers Show. And remember, we're now on social media too, if you search for Honest Designers. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.